Chapter 5. William and Lucy. The boy wore a nightshirt. He had red hair and freckles. He looked about 4 years old. He rubbed his eyes sleepily. Then he saw Teddy. "Puppy," he said with a huge smile. He threw his arms around the little dog's neck. Teddy licked his face. "Come back to bed, William," a voice called from inside the room. "Come out," Annie shouted. "It's an emergency." A moment later, the door opened wider. A girl in a long white gown peered out. She had red hair and freckles too. She was tall and thin. She looked about 12 or 13 years old. "Hello," she said. She put her arm around the little boy. "I'm Lucy O'Malley. This is my brother, William." "I'm Annie," said Annie, "and this is my brother, Jack. Get your parents and tell them to come with us." Lucy looked confused. "Our parents aren't here. They're in New York," she said. "We're on our way to them." "Listen, the Titanic has hit an iceberg," said Annie. "We'll take you to the lifeboat." "What do you mean?" said Lucy. "The ship is sinking," said Annie. "Look." She pointed to the water at the end of the hall. "Oh no," cried Lucy. "Don't be afraid," said Jack. "Just get your coats and your life belts. We don't have much time." Lucy nodded. Then she went back inside the room and came out with their things. Lucy pulled on her coat and her life belt. Annie helped William put his on. "Let's go," said Jack. "Wait, can Teddy fit in your knapsack?" said Annie. "Try," said Jack. Annie slipped the little dog into the leather knapsack on Jack's back. Only Teddy's front paws and head stuck out. "Stay there, honey," said Annie. She kissed Teddy on his nose. Jack didn't feel any extra weight in his knapsack. The little dog felt as light as air. "Wait, I forgot something," said Lucy. "We don't have time," started Jack, but Lucy rushed back into the room. "Hurry," said Annie. When Lucy came out, Jack saw her slip something into her coat pocket. Then she grabbed William's hand. "Ready?" said Jack. Suddenly, he felt freezing water brush against his shoes. He looked down. The green seawater was slowly moving down the hall. "Arf! Arf!" barked Teddy from Jack's backpack. "Run!" cried Annie. Chapter 6. Women and Children First. Oh, I know how you all are. Chapter 6, and we're on page 43, and the total number of pages are 70. So, Annie led everyone down the hall to the stairs, away from the cold seawater. As she and Lucy helped William up the stairs, Jack and Teddy followed. Jack looked back. The water was creeping up the stairs, step by step. "Come on, Jack," Annie shouted. Jack ran up the rest of the stairs. He and Annie led William and Lucy through the smoky room. The men were still playing cards. "To the lifeboats!" Annie yelled at the card players. "Right now! Hurry!" The men smiled at her again. "Little girl," one said with a laugh, "even if this ship does sink, it will take all night. There's plenty of time for everyone on board to be rescued. Indeed, many ships are on their way right now, another man said in a soothing voice. There's nothing to be afraid of. Not true, said Annie. Lucy turned to Jack. This doesn't sound so bad after all, she said. It is bad. Please trust me, said Jack. We have to keep going. They went outside. The crowd on the third-class deck had grown. More wore life belts, but no one here seemed very worried yet. Jack and Annie pulled Lucy and William along. They hurried through the crowd and down the first-class hall. They came to the end and trooped up the grand stairway. A band played lively music. With a hiss and a rush of light, a rocket streaked into the sky. It made a loud boom. Then it burst into many colored balls. Shivering in the cold, William laughed and clapped. Fireworks, he said. Lucy looked at Jack and Annie. This isn't a trick, is it? She said. You've brought us to a party. No, it isn't. Don't you remember the water downstairs? Lucy's smile faded. Women and children first, someone shouted. That's you, said Annie. Come on. She pulled Lucy and William toward a lifeboat. Chapter 7. The Gift. The lifeboat was waiting to go down. It looked tiny as it swung on the cables at the side of the big ship. The water below looked black. Get in! Get in! A uniformed man said. No, no, said William. He hid his face against Lucy's coat. I'd rather stay here, she said to Jack and Annie. Jack understood. The brightly lit Titanic seemed so solid and safe compared to the little lifeboat. You can't stay here, said Annie. The Titanic is going to sink soon. Very soon, said Jack. Lucy kept shaking her head. Jack saw tears in her eyes. Lucy, we're telling the truth, said Annie. For your brother's sake, we have to be brave. Lucy straightened up and tried to smile. All right, she said, I will. This way, a man called. Women and children, this way, you four. He pointed at them. Get in, said Jack. He gently pushed Lucy and William forward. Goodbye, Lucy, said Annie. Goodbye, William. Lucy looked surprised. You're not coming? She asked. No, we're going home another way, said Annie. We'll be safe. We will. Don't worry, said Jack. Wait, said Lucy. She reached into her coat pocket and brought out a silver watch on a chain. This is a gift for both of you, she said. It's our father's watch. We carried it on the voyage for good luck. I have a feeling that the two of you were our good luck tonight. Jack looked at the watch as Lucy put it around Annie's neck. The time on the watch was 1:50. There were only 30 minutes left. Hurry, hurry, he said. Jack and Annie watched as a big man picked Lucy up and swung her into the little boat. Then He picked William up and put him in Lucy's lap. Just then, the man picked Annie up. "No!" shouted Annie. "Into the lifeboat, my dear," the man said, and he tossed Annie into the lifeboat. "No, no!" cried Jack. Then the man reached for him. Jack jumped away just in time. "Annie!" he called. "Get out!" Annie tried to climb out of the lifeboat. "Let me out!" she cried. "Huff! Huff!" barked Teddy from over Jack's shoulder. The lifeboat jerked. It started creaking down towards the cold, dark sea. "Come back!" Jack called, but there was nothing he could do as Annie disappeared from sight. Chapter 8, page 54. Every man for himself. "Annie!" cried Jack. "Let me out!" He heard Annie shout, but the lifeboat kept going down. "Wait for me!" came a loud voice. "Wait for me!" A woman in a fur coat appeared at the railing. She nearly threw herself over the side of the ship. "Stop!" the uniformed man called. "Bring the boat back up for Lady Blackwell." Slowly, the lifeboat was brought back up. Jack pushed his way forward. The lifeboat came even with the ship. Jack reached out to Annie. She grabbed his hands. He pulled her back into the sinking ship. "Room for one more," Annie shouted to Lady Blackwell. Then she and Jack took off before anyone could catch them. They ran up the slanting deck. Annie stopped and peered over the railing. Jack looked too. They saw Lucy and William's little lifeboat creaking down towards the Atlantic Ocean. It reached the glassy black water. Then it floated off in the distance. Annie waved. "Bye, William! Bye, Lucy!" she shouted. "Thank you for your gift." She held up the watch that hung from her neck. Then she and Jack looked at it. The time was 2:06. "Only 15 minutes left," said Annie. "We have to get back to the treehouse now," said Jack. "Let's climb the stairs to the smokestacks." Suddenly, the front of the ship dipped down into the sea. Deck chairs started to slide past Jack and Annie. The band played a slow, calm song. It sounded like a church hymn. But the crowd started to panic. People pushed and shouted, trying to get to a safer part of the ship. "Every man for himself!" the captain shouted to all of his crew. The men all stopped what they were doing and ran up the deck. Jack and Annie ran too. They dodged sliding tables and chairs. They reached the stairs that led to the smokestacks. They grabbed the railing and pulled themselves up the steps. The ship tilted further. "Get to one of those smokestacks," cried Jack. They slipped and crawled onto the deck. But when they got to the smokestacks, Jack and Annie looked around wildly. The treehouse was gone.